John Harper stood on the edge of the landing platform, watching as the sleek silver spacecraft slowly descended towards the alien planet. His heart beat faster than usual, and he could feel the weight of the mission pressing on him. This was no ordinary operation. This was a mission to infiltrate the heart of an alien empire, to confront a being who was considered the most dangerous ruler in the galaxy. The alien queen, feared and hated by many, had been targeting Earth for years, and now it was time to end her reign once and for all. He adjusted his gear, checking the tightness of his armor and ensuring his weapons were secure. The mission had been briefed in the most straightforward terms: infiltrate the alien queen's palace, find her, and eliminate her. There was no room for failure. Earth's government had decided that the Queen's empire posed too much of a threat to humanity's future, and John had been chosen to take action. His orders were clear, but as the shuttle doors opened, he couldn't help but feel a gnawing doubt. John was no stranger to dangerous missions, but this one felt different. The alien queen was a figure wrapped in mystery, and the whispers about her were unsettling. Some called her a ruthless tyrant, while others said she was merely trying to survive in a galaxy full of hostile forces. But none of that mattered now. His job was simple: eliminate the threat no matter what. As he stepped off the shuttle, his boots making a soft thud on the foreign ground, John couldn't help but marvel at the alien world before him. The sky was a deep purple, swirling with strange clouds, while towering structures reached up into the air, their surfaces covered in iridescent patterns that shimmered under the dim light. The palace, however, was the most impressive sight of all. It loomed in the distance, a massive structure made of some kind of dark, glossy material that seemed to pulse with life. It was an ancient building, yet it radiated a kind of futuristic energy, a fusion of nature and technology. He was far from alone, though. As he approached the palace's perimeter, he could see alien soldiers patrolling the grounds. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, tall and lithe, with skin that seemed to shift colors with every movement. Their eyes glowed faintly, scanning the area for any signs of intrusion. John had been briefed on the security measures, but seeing them in person made him realize just how dangerous this mission would be. These were not just any soldiers. They were the Queen's personal guard, and they would do anything to protect her. But John was ready. He had trained for this moment for months. He knew how to move silently, how to blend into his surroundings, and how to disable any security measures that stood in his way. He wasn't worried about getting past the guards. He was more concerned about the Queen herself. What if the rumors were true? What if she truly was the monster that Earth had painted her to be? His mind raced as he approached the outer gates of the palace. The entrance was guarded by a pair of towering statues, each one depicting a majestic figure with elegant wings, their features sharp and regal. John couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he gazed at them. These statues were not simply works of art. They were symbols of the power that resided within the palace. He had to remind himself that this was not a place for awe. It was a place for action. Taking a deep breath, he activated the cloaking device in his suit. The faint hum of the technology was barely audible as he blended into the shadows. He moved quickly, avoiding the patrolling guards and slipping through the gaps in the security system. His heart raced, but he remained calm, his focus sharp. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. The interior of the palace was even more impressive than the outside. The walls were made of some kind of living material, veins of glowing energy running through them like the pulse of a heart. The floors were smooth and reflective, almost like a mirror, and the air was filled with a faint scent of flowers, an odd contrast to the sterile, high-tech atmosphere that surrounded him. John moved cautiously through the corridors, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, as he made his way deeper into the heart of the palace. As he approached the throne room, the sense of unease he had been trying to ignore grew stronger. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. He could feel the weight of his mission pressing down on him, each step bringing him closer to the Queen. What would he find when he entered that room? A ruthless dictator? A calculating monster? Or perhaps something else entirely? John took a deep breath and stepped through the ornate doors that led into the throne room. His boots echoed on the stone floor as he entered, and for the first time, he felt a strange sense of stillness. The room was massive, with walls that seemed to stretch up endlessly. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, sat the queen. She was not what he had expected. She was tall and elegant, draped in flowing robes made of shimmering fabric that seemed to shift colors as she moved. Her skin was a deep shade of violet, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. She regarded him with a calm, almost serene expression, her hands folded in her lap, as if she had been expecting him all along. For a moment, John was frozen in place. This wasn't the fierce tyrant he had imagined. There was no anger in her gaze, no malice in her posture. Instead, there was a quiet intelligence, a deep understanding of the world around her. "So, you are the human they sent to kill me," the queen said, her voice soft but commanding. It was a voice that carried both authority and compassion, a strange combination that sent a shiver down John's spine. "I must admit, I expected a more dramatic entrance." John's hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side, but he hesitated. This wasn't what he had expected. He had thought he would face a bloodthirsty ruler, someone who would fight to the death to protect her throne. But here she was, sitting calmly, almost as if she had anticipated his arrival. "What do you want from me?" John demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. "I want you to listen," the queen replied. "I want you to hear my side of the story before you make your decision." John stared at her, uncertainty flooding his mind. He had been trained to carry out his mission without question, but now, standing before the queen, everything seemed less certain. Was he truly here to stop a monster, or was there more to this story than he had been told? The queen continued, her voice calm and measured. "You were sent here by your government, yes? They told you I was a threat to your people, that I was a tyrant who must be eliminated. But I ask you, John Harper, how many of your kind have I attacked? How many of your people have I harmed?" John was silent. The truth was, he didn't know. All he had been told was that she was dangerous, that her empire posed a threat to Earth. But standing here now, in the presence of this alien queen, he wasn't so sure. "I am not your enemy," the queen said, her eyes locking with his. "But if you choose to take that weapon and end my life, then you will have made an enemy of me, and I will not stand by while your people destroy everything I've worked for." The room was silent for a long moment, and John found himself torn. What was the right choice? He had come here to kill, to follow orders without question. But now, with the queen's words echoing in his mind, he wasn't so sure anymore. For the first time since the mission began, John felt doubt. Was he really the hero in this story? Or was he just another pawn in a much larger game? John's mind raced. The queen's calm, collected presence stood in stark contrast to the violent image he had been fed by his superiors. The mission briefing had painted her as the enemy, a ruthless ruler who had declared war on humanity. Yet here she sat, so different from the monster he had imagined. She was not the cold, calculating despot he had been warned about. Instead, she seemed almost human. "Why should I listen to you?" John finally asked, his voice coming out more harshly than he intended. He didn't want to listen. He had come here for one reason: to eliminate the threat. That's what his commanders had told him, and he had always followed orders without question, until now. The queen's eyes softened slightly, though there was still a sharpness in them that caught his attention. She regarded him for a moment before speaking again, her voice calm but firm. "Because your people have been lied to, John Harper. Because I am not the enemy your leaders have made me out to be. And because if you choose to kill me, you may very well be making an enemy of yourself."
Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had come here with certainty, with a clear goal in mind.
But now, everything seemed less clear. The queen wasn't the heartless tyrant he had been led to believe. And for the first time, John began to question the very foundation of the mission. Was Earth's government lying to him? Were they manipulating him into carrying out a murder for a cause he didn't fully understand?
I don't believe you,
John said, shaking his head. His voice was still steady, but a knot had formed in his stomach. I've been briefed. Earth has its reasons for this mission. The Queen leaned back slightly in her throne, her fingers tracing the intricate designs of the armrest. And what are those reasons, exactly? What have they told you about me, about my people? John's jaw tightened. He didn't want to give in to her words, to let her manipulate him. But the question lingered in his mind. What had they told him? All he had been told was that the Queen was dangerous, that she led a vast alien empire that was bent on destroying humanity. He had been told that his mission was vital, that he was protecting Earth from a war it couldn't win. But now, as he stood in front of her, he wasn't so sure. They told me you were a threat, he said finally, his voice quieter. That your empire was preparing to invade Earth. The Queen's eyes seemed to darken for a moment, but her expression remained composed. Your people are always so quick to assume the worst of us. But you don't know the full story, do you, John? You don't know what has happened to us, what we've had to endure just to survive. John shifted uncomfortably, his hand tightening around the grip of his weapon. He hadn't expected this kind of conversation. He had expected a battle, a chase, a fight to the death. But instead he was having a conversation that was slowly making him question everything. I don't know your story, he admitted, his voice tinged with frustration.
All I know is what I've been told, and what I've seen.
The Queen nodded slowly. I understand. It's difficult to look beyond the stories you've been fed. But I ask you, John, to consider what you've seen for yourself. You've witnessed how my people defend their own. You've seen that we are not the savages they make us out to be. And yet, you still carry a weapon aimed at my life.
Tell me, what do you think that will solve? Her words stung, and John found himself at a loss for a moment.
He had always believed that his mission was righteous, that his duty was clear. But now, as he stood in this alien throne room, he felt more uncertain than ever before. I don't know what to believe anymore, John said, his voice betraying the doubt he was trying so hard to suppress. I don't know who to trust.
The Queen's gaze softened again, and she rose slowly from her throne.
She moved with an elegance that was both commanding and graceful, her every step deliberate. She wasn't the monster he had been taught to hate. She wasn't a tyrant. She was a ruler, yes, but also a survivor, someone who had fought for the survival of her people in a galaxy that didn't seem to care. You're not the first soldier to come here with doubts, the Queen said, her voice quiet but steady. You're not the first to question the stories your government has told you. But you're also not the first to realize that what you've been told isn't the truth. John's mind swirled with her words. He couldn't deny it. He had seen the truth in the Queen's eyes, heard the sincerity in her voice. She wasn't the monster he had been told she was. But that didn't make his mission any less real. He couldn't just abandon it. He couldn't let his doubts make him falter. He had come here to do a job. But what if the job wasn't what he thought it was?
What am I supposed to do now?
John asked, his voice hoarse. The Queen smiled softly, almost sympathetically.
What you do next is up to you. But know this. If you kill me, you will be making an enemy of an entire species.
You will ensure that war between our people is inevitable. Is that what you want? Is that the future you truly want for humanity? John's grip on his weapon loosened slightly. The Queen's words echoed in his mind, bouncing back and forth, pushing him in ways he didn't expect. You don't have to be a pawn in someone else's game. John turned away, his mind still in turmoil. He didn't know what the future held. But one thing was clear. This was not the mission he had been expecting. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure who the real enemy was. John stood at the entrance of the Queen's chamber, the cold stone beneath his boots, grounding him in the moment. The Queen's words still echoed in his mind, bouncing around like a trapped bird. "The choice is yours." He had heard that phrase in his thoughts a dozen times since their conversation. It gnawed at him, forcing him to confront a reality he hadn't considered before. He had been taught to follow orders without question. But now, here he was, questioning everything he had been told. The mission was no longer as clear-cut as it had been when he first landed on this alien world. He had expected to find a monster, an enemy who would be easy to defeat, someone who had a clear and simple agenda. Instead, he found a leader who wasn't at all what he had imagined. The Queen's words had not been a plea. They had been a request for understanding, a call for peace. Could it really be that simple? Could Earth's government, his own people, be wrong? John felt the weight of the decision before him, a decision that could change the course of not only his life, but the entire galaxy. He had never been in a situation like this. His whole career had been about following orders, about doing what was asked of him without hesitation. But now, for the first time, he found himself on the other side of that equation. The Queen had asked for help, but how could he help her? Was it even possible to bring peace between Earth and the alien empire she led? Or was it all just a trap? His fingers brushed against the side of his weapon, still holstered at his waist. It was a comfort to have it there, a reminder of the soldier he had always been. But today, the weapon felt heavy, its weight more of a burden than a tool of protection. He glanced down at it, then slowly moved his hand away, the familiar grip not offering the reassurance it once had. He turned toward the exit, his mind made up for now. He needed to think. He needed time. He couldn't make such an important decision on impulse. The Queen had given him a choice, but he wasn't sure he was ready to make it. He had to go back to his shuttle, back to where he had first arrived. Maybe there, in the quiet of the night, he could find the clarity he was looking for. John moved through the corridors of the palace, the strange hum of alien technology vibrating in the air. The palace was far from what he expected. It wasn't a dark fortress of evil, as Earth's government had painted it. It was peaceful, tranquil almost, with soft flowing lights that illuminated the stone walls and strange plants growing from the floors. The atmosphere was peaceful, almost inviting. It felt like a home, not a place of war. But the war was real. He couldn't forget that. His orders had been clear: eliminate the Queen, to prevent the conflict from escalating further. But now, what was he supposed to do? How could he turn back after everything he had seen? The Queen's people, the Zarathians, had been painted as enemies. But what if they weren't the enemy at all? The journey back to his shuttle felt long, though it was only a matter of minutes. His mind was a whirlwind, torn between two worlds. He passed the guards once more, but they didn't seem as threatening as they had before. They weren't the monsters he had imagined, standing at attention, ready to strike at any moment. They were just soldiers, much like him, doing their duty. John stopped at the shuttle's entrance and paused, staring up at the sky. The stars were clearer here, brighter than he had ever seen them back on Earth. They were scattered across the expanse of space like glitter in the night, a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy. For a moment, he forgot about the mission. He simply took in the view, allowing himself a brief moment of peace. But peace was a luxury he couldn't afford. Inside the shuttle, he activated the console and checked in with Earth Command. The screen flickered to life, and a familiar face appeared in front of him. General Alvarez, his commanding officer. The general's stern expression was as cold as ever. "Harper!" Alvarez's voice crackled through the speakers. "Report." John hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "I've met with the Queen." Alvarez raised an eyebrow.
And? Did you eliminate the target?
"No, sir."
I need more time. What do you mean, more time?
This mission is critical. We cannot afford delays.
The Queen is a threat to humanity, and we've given you the responsibility to neutralize her. Is there a problem? John clenched his fists.
I'm not sure I can go through with it. Alvarez's expression darkened. What are you saying, Harper?
You're a soldier. You know your orders. I know my orders, sir. But what if they're wrong? What if the Queen isn't the enemy? The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, Alvarez didn't speak, as though processing John's words. You've been compromised, Alvarez said finally, his voice low. This is the kind of weakness we cannot afford. You've been chosen because of your ability to follow orders without question. Now you're questioning everything. John's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know how to respond. His mind was a storm of confusion and doubt. But one thing was clear. He couldn't keep pretending that everything was black and white. There were too many shades of gray. I'm not compromised, John said quietly, his voice steady.
I'm asking for clarity. I need to understand what's really happening.
I can't just kill someone because I've been told to. Not without knowing the full story.
Do not make the mistake of thinking you can question your orders, Harper. The mission is clear.
You will return to the Queen's palace and finish what you started. That is an order. John's grip on the console tightened. This was the moment. He could either do as he was told, return to the Queen's palace, and follow through with the assassination, or he could risk everything and make a choice that could change the future. The decision weighed heavily on him. He knew what his superiors expected. They wanted him to return to Earth with the Queen's death on his hands, to end the threat once and for all. But the Queen had asked him for something different. She had asked for peace, for a chance to avoid the very war that Earth's government seemed determined to start.
I can't, John said, shaking his head. I'm not coming back.
Not until I know the truth. Alvarez's expression twisted with fury. You are no longer under my command, Harper.
You've made your choice, and now you'll face the consequences. The screen went black, and John sat in silence, his chest heavy with the weight of his decision.
He had chosen a path that would not be easy. But as he thought about the Queen's plea for peace, something inside him told him it was the right path. But he stood up and made his way to the shuttle door, stepping out into the alien landscape once again. This time, however, he didn't feel the same tension in his muscles. There was a resolve in him now, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. John knew what he had to do. He had to face the Queen once more, not as an enemy, but as an ally. He had to listen to her, understand her, and help her if he could. The war was not inevitable. Peace was still possible. It would take effort, understanding, and trust, but it was possible. As he walked back toward the palace, the stars above seemed a little brighter, as if the universe was waiting for him to make the right choice. John walked through the long corridors of the palace once again, the quiet hum of alien technology surrounding him. The palace, though majestic, felt like a labyrinth now, a place of uncertainty and difficult choices. The last time he had walked these halls, he had been certain of one thing. His mission was to eliminate the Queen, no matter what. But now, everything had changed. With each step, the weight of his decision pressed on him more. He had chosen to stand against the orders he had always followed. He had rejected the authority that had commanded him to kill. And now, there was no going back. John had decided to listen to the Queen, to understand her side of the story, and to decide for himself what was right. He reached the grand throne room, where the Queen awaited him. He had told her he would return, that he needed time to think. She hadn't pressed him for an answer, but John could feel the weight of her expectation. She believed in him, in humanity's capacity for understanding and peace. But would he be able to live up to that belief? He entered the throne room quietly, the soft light from the glowing walls casting strange shadows. The queen was seated in her throne, but she was no longer the imposing figure he had first seen. She seemed more like a leader, someone who carried the burdens of her people with grace. There was a calmness to her presence, an air of authority, but also a compassion that was evident in the way she looked at him. "John," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You've returned." He nodded, but didn't immediately speak. He could feel the queen's gaze on him, waiting for him to say something, but words were hard to find. His mind was a tangled mess of doubt and realization. He had come to this palace to end her life, but now, standing before her again, he realized that he wasn't sure if he could. "I've made my decision," John said, his voice steady, but with a trace of uncertainty. "I can't follow through with the mission. I can't kill you."
The queen's expression softened, and she stood up from her throne. There was no surprise in her eyes, no judgment, only understanding.
It was as if she had known all along that he would come to this conclusion, that he would choose to seek peace rather than follow orders without question. "Thank you," she said quietly, stepping closer to him.
I know it was not an easy decision, but it is the right one.
John shifted uncomfortably, not sure how to respond. He had expected the queen to be angry or disappointed, but instead, she seemed relieved. She wasn't angry with him for defying his mission. She was grateful.
I'm still not sure if I understand, John admitted. You say you want peace, but how do I know that's true?
How do I know this isn't just a trick, another way to gain more power over my people? The queen looked at him for a long moment, her gaze penetrating.
I understand your doubt. It's not easy to trust someone who has been painted as an enemy.
But the truth is, John, I have no desire for war. War has cost my people too much already.
I want peace because it is the only way we can survive in this galaxy. And I want peace with Earth because we cannot continue to live in the shadow of fear and hostility.
John was silent. He wanted to believe her. Her words rang with sincerity, but how could he be sure? How could he be sure that the queen, the leader of an entire empire, wasn't just using him to further her own agenda?
I don't know if I can trust your word, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I've been told that your empire is dangerous, that you have plans to invade Earth.
And now you're asking me to believe that all of that is wrong. How do I reconcile that with everything I've been told? The queen's expression softened even more, and she stepped closer, lowering her voice. I do not expect you to believe me immediately. I do not expect you to throw away everything you've been taught without question. But I ask you to look at the situation through your own eyes.
Look at what has happened between our peoples. Look at the way we have been forced into conflict.
John glanced down at the ground, trying to make sense of it all. He had been trained to believe that the queen was the enemy, that her empire was a threat that needed to be destroyed. But now, standing in front of her, he realized that he didn't know the full story. He didn't know what had led to this war, or even if it was a war at all.
What if you're wrong? He asked. What if I'm wrong?
What if, in the end, this peace you're offering is just a way for you to grow your power, to destroy Earth's people in the end?
I don't have the answer to that, the queen replied, but I will not lie to you.
I don't want to destroy Earth. I don't want to destroy anyone.
I want to end the fighting, to create a future where we can all live without fear. But for that, I need your help.
I need someone who understands the human heart, someone who can stand against the fear and hatred that has been spread across this galaxy.
John met her gaze, his mind swirling with uncertainty. He had been sent here to kill, to end the threat to Earth. But now, that threat seemed less clear. Could he really trust the queen? Could he really believe that peace was possible? I can't make that decision alone, John said after a long pause. I can't decide the fate of two worlds on my own. I need to go back to Earth. I need to tell them what I've learned. But I can't do that unless I'm sure. The Queen nodded slowly, as if she had expected that response.
I understand, and I won't ask you to make that decision now.
But know this. The choice you make could change everything. It could change the course of the galaxy, and it could determine whether we live in a future of war or one of peace. John looked up at her, seeing for the first time the full weight of the responsibility she carried. She wasn't just a ruler. She was a leader who had seen the horrors of war and had come to believe that peace was the only way forward. Could he trust her? Could he really believe in the possibility of peace between their worlds? I'll go back, John said, his voice low but resolute.
I'll tell them what I've seen, but I can't promise anything.
The Queen smiled, a look of quiet understanding in her eyes. That is all I ask, John. Go to your people. Share what you have learned, but remember, peace is never easy. It requires courage. It requires understanding. And most of all, it requires trust. John nodded. He knew the Queen was right. He had been given a glimpse of a different future. A future where war didn't have to be inevitable. But that future wasn't guaranteed. It would take work, trust, and sacrifice from both sides. And John didn't know if humanity was ready to make those sacrifices. He turned toward the exit, his mind heavy with the burden of his decision. He had chosen the path of peace, but now he had to find a way to make it a reality. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be those who would fight against it, who would see his actions as a betrayal. But John knew that the path to peace was never simple. As he stepped out of the throne room, he looked up at the stars above. The universe seemed so vast, so full of possibilities. It had always felt like a place of endless conflict. But now, for the first time, John felt like it was a place where peace could exist. The choice he had made wasn't just about the Queen or her empire. It was about humanity, about the future, and about whether they could rise above their fears and prejudices to create something better. John didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew one thing. He couldn't walk away from the possibility of peace. And so, with a heavy heart but a determined mind, John set out on the journey back to Earth. He didn't know what would happen next, but he was ready to fight for a future where both his world and the Queen's could live side by side in peace.